Stop. Before you open that refrigerator tonight, before you grab that container of leftovers and hit the microwave button without thinking, I need you to hear something. There are 5 foods sitting in kitchens across the world right now. Foods that millions of people reheat every single week. And the science of what happens inside those foods the second time heat touches them is something almost nobody is talking about. Not your doctor, not the nutrition label, not the cooking show you watched last weekend. And here is the part that should make you pause. The organ most affected by these chemical changes? It almost never sends you a warning signal. It doesn't ache the way your back does. It doesn't swell the way an injury does. It operates in silence, deep in your abdomen, quietly regulating your blood sugar, quietly producing the enzymes your body depends on to break down every single meal you eat. Your pancreas. Most people go their entire lives without thinking about their pancreas, until the day they absolutely have to. And by then, the story has already been written across years of small, repeated habits. Habits like reheating food. My name is Dr. William Madison. I've spent years studying the relationship between everyday dietary habits and long-term metabolic health. And today I'm going to walk you through 5 of the most commonly reheated foods in the modern kitchen and explain, in plain language, exactly what the science says is happening inside them when heat is applied a second time. Some of these foods will genuinely shock you. Several of them appear on healthy eating lists all the time. People eat them specifically because they believe they are doing something good for their bodies. And yet the chemistry of reheating can quietly change what those foods do inside you. By the end of this video, I want you to be able to walk into your kitchen with completely new eyes. Not with fear, not with anxiety, but with knowledge. Because the people who understand this stuff, the people who know the small adjustments that matter, those are the people who protect their health quietly and consistently, year after year. Stay with me, because the first food on this list is something I guarantee you reheated at least once in the last 7 days. Before we get into the specific foods, I want to make sure you understand why the pancreas matters so much in this conversation. Because I find that most people, even people who are genuinely health conscious, have a surprisingly incomplete picture of what the pancreas actually does. They know about the heart, they know about the liver, they know the lungs and the kidneys. But the pancreas? It tends to get overlooked. Here is why that is a problem. Your pancreas performs 2 critical jobs. The first is hormonal. It produces insulin and glucagon, the 2 hormones your body uses to keep your blood sugar in balance. Every meal you eat triggers a response from your pancreas. Every spike in glucose, every dip in energy, your pancreas is the organ working behind the scenes to manage that. The second job is digestive. Your pancreas produces powerful enzymes, amylase, lipase, protease, that break down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in your small intestine. Without adequate pancreatic enzyme production, your body literally cannot absorb the nutrients from your food properly. Now here is what makes this organ uniquely vulnerable. Unlike your liver, which has tremendous regenerative capacity, pancreatic tissue does not repair itself easily. Damage to the pancreas tends to be cumulative. And because the pancreas is tucked deep in the abdomen, behind the stomach, in front of the spine, it does not produce pain or discomfort the way many other organs do when something is going wrong. Researchers studying chronic pancreatitis and pancreatic dysfunction have identified several dietary patterns that place repeated, low-grade stress on pancreatic tissue over time. Oxidative stress, inflammatory signals, blood sugar volatility. These are the mechanisms that matter. And some of them, this is the part most people miss entirely, are directly connected to how you handle leftover food. So let's get into it. 5 foods, real science, and genuinely actionable changes you can start making today. Think about the last time you had fried food for dinner and didn't finish the whole portion. Maybe it was French fries. Maybe it was fried chicken, spring rolls, tempura, onion rings. It doesn't matter what the specific food was. What matters is what you did next. You wrapped it up, put it in the refrigerator, and told yourself you'd finish it tomorrow. Because wasting food feels irresponsible. Because it still tastes good reheated. Because you've done it 100 times and nothing obviously bad ever happened. Here is what you didn't see happening inside that food. The oils used for deep frying, particularly vegetable oils high in polyunsaturated fats, like sunflower oil, corn oil, and soybean oil, are chemically unstable at high temperatures. When you fry food in these oils, oxidation begins immediately. Free radicals form. The oil starts to degrade at a molecular level. Now here is where the reheating part becomes significant. When you take that already oxidized, already stressed oil, locked into the coating and fibers of your fried food, and you apply heat to it again, You accelerate that degradation process. The oil breaks down further. It produces compounds called aldehydes, peroxides, and other oxidation byproducts that have been the subject of considerable scientific research in recent decades. Why do researchers care about these compounds? Because oxidative stress, the cumulative buildup of free radical damage in the body, is one of the primary mechanisms linked to chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation, sustained over months and years, is associated with a long list of metabolic conditions that affect the pancreas, the cardiovascular system, and the broader hormonal environment of the body. One reheated portion of French fries will not cause any of this. I want to be absolutely clear about that. But here's the honest question worth sitting with. How many times per month do you reheat fried food? Multiply that by 12 months. Multiply that by 10 years. Small exposures, repeated consistently over a long period, are how chronic dietary risk actually accumulates. It is not the one birthday cake or the one plate of fried chicken at a family gathering. It is the pattern, the quiet, repeated habit that never gets examined because it never triggers an obvious alarm. The practical solution here is almost embarrassingly simple. If you want to reheat fried food and bring back some of its texture, use dry heat. An oven set to moderate temperature. An air fryer. These methods warm the food without introducing another round of heated oil into the equation. The food crisps up, it tastes better, and you avoid adding another layer of oxidized fat to your meal. Tiny adjustment, meaningful difference over time. This is the one that surprises people the most, every time. Because when I explain this to people, their first reaction is almost always the same. They look at me and say, "But spinach is good for you. You're telling me I shouldn't reheat my healthy food?" And the honest answer is, it's complicated. And that complexity is worth understanding. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, arugula, beet greens are genuinely nutritious. They contain iron, magnesium, folate, vitamin K, and a range of antioxidants. There is no debate about that. The issue isn't the vegetables themselves. The issue is a specific chemical transformation that can happen when cooked greens are stored and then reheated. Here's the science. Leafy vegetables naturally contain compounds called nitrates. In their raw, uncooked form, these nitrates are largely harmless. Your body actually uses small amounts of dietary nitrate in beneficial ways. Some research even links it to cardiovascular health. The problem begins during storage. When cooked greens are stored, particularly at room temperature or in a refrigerator that isn't cold enough, bacteria naturally present in food begin converting those harmless nitrates into nitrites. This is a well-documented process. Food scientists have studied it extensively. The concerning part is that it happens silently. The greens look the same, they smell the same. There is absolutely no visual or sensory cue that anything has changed. Now apply heat a second time. Under certain conditions, particularly in the presence of proteins in acidic environments, those nitrites can react to form compounds known as nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are something the scientific and public health communities have studied very carefully, because some forms have demonstrated carcinogenic properties in laboratory research. Now I want to be precise here because precision matters. Eating reheated spinach once or twice or even occasionally over the course of a lifetime is not something the research suggests is acutely dangerous. The concern is about repeated, habitual exposure, about the kind of quiet, consistent pattern that accumulates over years in a household that batch cooks greens every Sunday and reheats them through the week without a second thought. And this is where the pancreatic connection comes in. The pancreas is embedded in a digestive system that processes everything you eat. Compounds that create oxidative stress and inflammatory signals don't stay contained in one place. They circulate. They interact with tissues throughout the body. And the pancreas, already working hard to manage blood sugar and enzyme production at every meal, is one of the organs that researchers pay close attention to when studying the cumulative effects of dietary chemical exposure. The easy fix? Eat cooked greens cold. This is not a sacrifice. Cold spinach in a grain bowl with lemon and olive oil is genuinely delicious. Cold kale in a wrap with hummus and roasted vegetables is a meal that requires zero reheating and delivers all the nutritional value of the original cook. You sidestep the second heating cycle entirely, and you still get every benefit those beautiful dark greens have to offer. This one is about something you genuinely cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot taste. And that is precisely what makes it so important to understand. Rice is one of the most widely eaten foods on Earth. In hundreds of millions of households across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and increasingly in Western countries, a pot of rice gets cooked and then eaten across multiple meals over multiple days. It is economical. It is practical. and most people who do it have done it their entire lives without thinking twice. But there is a microscopic process that can unfold inside a pot of cooked rice, a process that begins the moment the heat turns off and the cooling starts. And it is something food safety researchers have understood for decades, even though most consumers have never heard about it. Raw, uncooked rice can carry dormant spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Cooking rice at normal boiling temperatures kills the active bacteria. But here's the critical part. It does not always kill the spores. Spores are essentially bacterial survival capsules. They can withstand high heat in their dormant state. And when the temperature drops into the danger zone, the range between roughly 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, those spores can activate. They begin to multiply. And as they multiply, some strains produce toxins. Here is where it gets genuinely concerning. Some of the toxins produced by Bacillus cereus are heat stable. That means that even if you reheat the rice to a high temperature, even if you get it steaming hot, the toxins that were already produced during cooling may survive. Reheating kills bacteria, but it cannot always undo the chemical damage that bacteria have already caused. The illness associated with this, often called fried rice syndrome in food safety literature, typically presents as nausea, vomiting, and gastrointestinal distress. In healthy adults, it is usually uncomfortable rather than dangerous. But for children, elderly individuals, pregnant women, and anyone with a compromised immune system, the stakes are higher. And here's the question I want you to sit with for a moment. How long has the rice in your refrigerator been there right now? Not the rice you cooked last night, I mean the rice from last week, the portion you reheated Tuesday morning, the leftover rice you had cold with some soy sauce on Thursday. In many households, rice containers get repeatedly dipped into across an entire week, with no clear sense of when the original batch was cooked. The safer protocol is straightforward. After cooking rice, cool it quickly. Spreading it out on a baking sheet accelerates this, and refrigerate it within an hour. Eat it within 24 hours whenever possible, and avoid reheating the same batch of rice multiple times. These steps are simple. They require almost no additional effort, and they dramatically reduce the risk of bacterial toxin formation. Almost everyone has been here. You pull last night's roast chicken out of the refrigerator. You put it on a plate. You slide it into the microwave and run it for 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. You reach in, touch the surface, and it is hot. Satisfyingly hot. So you assume it is ready. You sit down, you eat it. What you did not check, what almost nobody checks, is what was happening inside that piece of chicken. Microwaves work in a fundamentally different way from conventional ovens. Rather than applying heat uniformly from the outside in, microwaves excite the water molecules inside food, generating heat from within. In theory, this should cook or heat food efficiently. In practice, it creates something that food scientists have a very specific term for: cold spots. Because different parts of a piece of chicken contain different densities of muscle fiber, fat, bone, and connective tissue, microwaves heat food unevenly. The outermost surface of a chicken breast may reach temperatures well above what is needed to eliminate bacteria, but a thicker interior section, or an area shielded by bone, may sit at a temperature that is warm but not hot enough to be fully safe. Bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter, the pathogens most commonly associated with poultry, require sustained heat to be reliably eliminated. If any part of that chicken does not reach the appropriate internal temperature, bacteria that survived the original cook, or were introduced during handling, may survive reheating as well. The reason this matters beyond immediate food safety is worth discussing. Repeated low-grade exposure to bacterial byproducts, even in amounts too small to cause an obvious illness episode, can create inflammatory signals in the gut and wider digestive system. And a digestive system under chronic, low-level inflammatory stress is a system that makes extra demands on the pancreas, which works in close coordination with the gut to regulate nutrient processing after every meal. The practical fix takes about 30 extra seconds. Cut chicken into smaller, more uniform pieces before reheating. This increases surface area and reduces the thickness the heat needs to penetrate. Use medium power rather than maximum power. Lower intensity microwaving gives heat more time to distribute evenly, rather than scorching the surface before the interior catches up. Pause halfway through, rearrange the pieces, and then let the food rest for a full minute after the microwave stops. Residual heat continues to distribute during that rest period. Better still, for larger pieces of chicken, consider the oven or a covered skillet with a small amount of water or broth. Slower, more even reheating dramatically reduces cold spot risk. We have arrived at the fifth food, and this one is different from the others on this list because the risk here is not bacterial, and it is not about toxic chemical formation. It is about something far more subtle, a metabolic shift that happens inside starchy foods when they are cooked, cooled, and then reheated. And understanding it changes how you think about food chemistry entirely. Potatoes are one of the most universally beloved foods in the world. Roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, potato wedges. In nearly every culture that grows them, potatoes are a staple, inexpensive, filling, versatile, and genuinely nutritious when prepared well. But here is something that almost never comes up in nutrition conversations. The way you handle the temperature of a cooked potato changes its fundamental biochemistry. When potatoes are cooked, when the starch granules inside them are exposed to heat and water, those starches gelatinize. They become the soft, easily digestible carbohydrate that your body breaks down quickly, absorbs into the bloodstream relatively fast, and prompts a corresponding insulin response. This is the potato in its familiar hot form. Now here is where it gets interesting. When a cooked potato cools, when you leave it in the refrigerator overnight, something remarkable happens at a molecular level. Some of those gelatinized starches undergo a process called retrogradation. The starch molecules rearrange themselves into a new structure, and in that new structure, they become something the scientific community calls resistant starch. Resistant starch is exactly what it sounds like. It resists digestion in the small intestine. Instead of being broken down and absorbed as glucose, which triggers an insulin spike, resistant starch passes to the large intestine, where it acts more like dietary fiber. It feeds beneficial gut bacteria. It produces short-chain fatty acids that support intestinal health. And critically, it results in a far more gradual, stable blood sugar response compared to the same potato eaten hot. For anyone managing blood sugar, or anyone trying to support long-term metabolic health, including pancreatic function, this distinction is significant. Now apply the reheat. When you take that cold, resistant starch-rich potato and expose it to high heat again, much of that beneficial structural change reverses. The resistant starch converts back toward regular digestible starch. The blood sugar impact shifts back toward the faster, more volatile profile. A portion of the metabolic benefit you would have gotten from eating it cold simply disappears. This is the science behind why cold potato salad, a staple in traditional cuisines around the world, is considered by researchers studying glycemic response to be a meaningfully different food, metabolically speaking, from the same potatoes eaten hot. The preparation is almost identical. The difference is entirely in how temperature was managed after cooking. You don't have to eat cold potatoes at every meal. But the next time you have leftover roasted potatoes, consider adding them cold to a salad, a wrap, or a lunch bowl. You may be getting more metabolic benefit from the leftovers than you would from the freshly reheated version. Food science sometimes produces genuinely counterintuitive results, and this is one of them. Let's bring this together. 5 foods, 5 distinct mechanisms, and 1 organ working silently in the background of every meal you eat that deserves more attention than most of us had been giving it. Fried foods. Oils that have already been stressed by high heat continue to degrade when reheated, producing oxidative compounds that contribute to chronic inflammation over time. Use dry heat to reheat fried food and avoid adding another round of overheated oil. Leafy greens. Harmless nitrates in vegetables like spinach and kale can convert to nitrites during storage, and under certain reheating conditions, those nitrites may form compounds that researchers study carefully for long-term health implications. Eat cooked greens cold whenever possible. The nutrition is still entirely there. Rice. Bacterial spores that survive cooking can produce heat-stable toxins during improper cooling. Cool rice quickly after cooking, refrigerate within an hour, and consume within 24 hours. Avoid reheating the same batch multiple times throughout the week. Chicken. Microwave reheating creates cold spots, areas inside dense protein that never reach temperatures sufficient to eliminate bacteria. Cut chicken into smaller pieces. Use medium power, pause and rearrange halfway through, and always allow rest time after heating. Potatoes. The resistant starch that forms when cooked potatoes cool, beneficial for blood sugar regulation and gut health, partially reverses when potatoes are reheated at high temperatures. Cold leftover potatoes in salads and bowls may deliver more metabolic benefit than reheated ones. None of these foods are bad. None of these situations require you to stop eating food you love or abandon practical habits that serve your household well. Leftovers are real life. They are economical, they reduce waste, and they save time. The goal of this conversation was never to create fear around your refrigerator. The goal was to give you something most people never get: a clear, honest look at the science behind habits that most of us perform completely automatically, day after day, year after year, without ever pausing to ask what is actually happening inside the food. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Your pancreas does not get the attention it deserves. It never complains. It never asks for anything. It just keeps working, managing your blood sugar, producing your digestive enzymes, quietly sustaining the metabolic architecture that allows your body to function. And the cumulative effect of the small choices you make in your kitchen every day, the way you reheat food, the way you cool it, the way you store it, those choices add up across a lifetime. Not dramatically, not in ways that show up on a single blood test or cause a sudden crisis, but slowly, quietly. The way most health outcomes actually develop, not through one catastrophic event, but through the gentle accumulation of small habits, day after day, across decades. The people who understand this don't have perfect diets. They don't follow complicated protocols or spend hours in the kitchen implementing elaborate systems. They simply know a few things that most people don't know. They make small adjustments. Use the oven instead of the microwave for chicken. Eat the greens cold. Cool the rice quickly. Skip the extra oil on the fried food. And those adjustments compound quietly, the same way the habits they replaced once did. That is what knowledge actually does. It doesn't demand perfection. It just shifts the odds, slightly and consistently, in your favor. If something in this video shifted how you think about your kitchen habits, even one small thing, I want to ask you to do something that costs you nothing. Think about one person in your life who reheats food without thinking twice. A parent who has been reheating the same pot of rice for 30 years. A partner who nukes last night's spinach every morning. A friend who finishes fried leftovers straight from the microwave. Someone who genuinely cares about their health but has simply never heard any of this. Share this video with them. Not because there is anything to be afraid of, not because they are doing something terribly wrong, but because the small, quiet act of understanding what is happening inside your food and making one or two tiny adjustments is one of the simplest gifts you can offer someone you care about. Knowledge that stays with one person helps one person. Knowledge that travels helps everyone it reaches. I'm Dr. William Madison. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Your health is worth understanding in detail. Your pancreas is worth protecting quietly, every day, in the small choices you probably never thought mattered this much. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people around you. And I will see you in the next video.